My dad died and we are having a memorial for him. My brother ruined it all, made it all about him. This one's a doozy. I would appreciate an honest opinion on the matter. My dad passed away on February 1st. My mom, my brother, and I are so broken and devastated. He was in his 4th year of dementia. He had fallen and broken his hip just 2 days after his 78th birthday in December. And when he was recovering after his surgery, they found a surprise stage 4 lung cancer diagnosis. And he lasted until Feb 1st. He had no chance. We are beyond broken. My brother had previously been estranged from us for 17 years. He has only been back into our lives for the last 6 years or so. He and my mother have a very toxic relationship. Both of them have their faults. I also had a very rocky relationship with my mother growing up, but it is what it is. She's got a few narcissistic traits, but so does my brother. They are both the same person in different bodies, both toxic. Both can never admit their faults. A few months before my father died, my brother and mother had a falling out. He didn't show his face or call my parents for 3 months. The only reason why he came around again is when we called to tell him we were rushing my dad to the hospital. Otherwise, he would have stayed away completely, because that's how he is. He wouldn't even call to say hi to my dad. He didn't even have to talk to my mom if they weren't getting along. But the least he could have done was chat with my dad. Life is short, as he soon found out. A little backstory. Not only did my brother walk away from us, he also walked away from his 2 kids, who are now grown adults. He has not had a relationship with them for over 20 years. He hates his daughter for something she did when she was 16, with money she was given by him. And he didn't like how she spent it. So he decided she was a piece of shit. He's not only had 1 failed marriage, but 2. He hates his ex-wife. Okay, fine. He despises his ex-in-laws for helping their daughter, his ex-wife, in court during the custody battle. Well, after all, they are her parents, right? Why would they help my brother? But when things were good, they bailed him out tons of times. But they are horrible people, right? Cry me a river. I maintained a close relationship with his daughter. We see each other and speak to each other regularly, as did my parents with her. My nephew kept to himself, but whenever I see him, it's like we continue where we left off. My brother would never flinch, never talk or ask about his kids or grandkids, and knew we had a close relationship with them. Must be awful to not be able to let go of anger after 30 years, huh? He refused to seek help. He was told by a doctor that he shows signs of mental health issues like BPD, and he stormed out of the doctor's office and denied it all. So my niece, who had a close relationship with my dad, is going to his celebration of life. She said, "I'm not afraid to be in the same room as my dad." How brave of her, right? We told my brother she was coming, and he was quite uncomfortable. We gave him no choice in the matter because, truthfully, he doesn't have a say. She gets to be there as much as he does. Here's the part where it gets ugly. For moral support, my niece asked if she could bring her grandparents with her, who also knew my parents and had a good relationship with them. We said, sure, why not? If that helps with the anxiety of you having to be in the same room as your father who abandoned you, then absolutely, please have them come. Well, my brother absolutely went ballistic, screaming and shouting at my mother, threatening her, telling her if she invites them, that he will grab the microphone out of my hands during my speech and make a holy show out of them and tell people what jerks they are. He absolutely hates them. Meanwhile, he doesn't understand that this is not about him. It's about his daughter requiring moral support to be able to be in the same room as her father, who doesn't give 2 shits about her, just so she can honor her deceased grandparent. Imagine that. Imagine my brother making it about him. Imagine that. He told my mother how awful she is, and he was scathing, white-hot mad, face red, with spittle coming out of his mouth as he screamed at her. Meanwhile, she is broken and grieving the loss of her husband. I am devastated over the loss of my dad. My dad's granddaughter, my brother's estranged daughter, is devastated over the loss of her poppy, and wants to brave it out and attend. Must be hard to face his demons. Then he called me. I told him if he knew what was good for him, he would leave me out of this because if I get my say, we will never speak again. I spoke some truths, told him I disagreed with his behavior, and I told him it's not about him. It's about Dad and who he would want there, not who my brother would want there, based on his personal problems from 30 frickin' years ago. He needs to let go. Must be so terrible to hold on to such rage for that long when everyone else has moved on. Now he needs to make everyone else's life miserable and accuse me of turning on him too? I know better. I didn't turn on him. I was a brutally honest sister who spoke the truth. He turned on his own children when he left, and now he has to face his demons and he can't. He's a coward. So now he refuses to attend. Told me he never wants to speak to me or Mom again. In a way, I'm relieved. I don't want that shoot in my life. Are we in the wrong? Edit to add. He pulled the same shoot at my wedding 3 years ago too. My niece was invited. We told her to bring a guest so she would have company. Her husband refused to be in the same room as my brother. So we told her to bring a friend instead. And my brother said if she comes that he wasn't coming to my wedding. But my niece ended up backing out at the end. In hindsight, I wish I had kicked my brother to the curb back then, because my niece deserved to be there more than he did. My brother is an absolute train wreck. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You handled it as well as can be expected. Agree with other posters to discuss with the employees where the memorial is being held. Inform them of the situation and coordinate what needs to be done to ensure he doesn't crash the memorial. Comment 2. So now he refuses to attend. Told me he never wants to speak to me or Mom again. Problem solved. Leave him to rot. Just make sure you have someone minding the door in case he shows up to try and crash the memorial service. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around for this mess. So, the memorial for my dad was set and things were tense. My brother, true to form, made a scene before the event even started. He showed up early, pacing around, muttering under his breath. I could tell he was just waiting for an excuse to explode. My niece arrived with her grandparents, and you could cut the tension with a knife. My brother, seeing them, turned a shade of red I didn't know existed. He stormed over to my mom, who was already a wreck from Dad's passing, and started in on her. Accusations flew, words that can't be taken back were said, and I saw my mom shrink back, her eyes welling up with tears. I stepped in, told my brother to back off. He rounded on me, all that pent-up anger and resentment spilling out. He blamed me for siding with them, said I was betraying him. I tried to reason with him, remind him this was about Dad, not his grudges. But he wouldn't have it. He was like a dog with a bone, couldn't let go. The ceremony started and my brother sat in the back, arms crossed, scowling. I gave my speech, talked about Dad, his life, his love for his family. I saw my niece tear up, her grandparents comforting her. And then, as I feared, my brother couldn't hold back. He stood up and started shouting about how this was all wrong, how we were disrespecting him. It was a disaster. People were shocked. Some tried to calm him down, but he was beyond reason. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him, leaving a silence that was almost as loud as his yelling. After the memorial, the fallout was immediate. My mom, already fragile, was devastated by my brother's actions. She couldn't understand how her own son could do this. I was furious, tired of his selfishness, his inability to see past his own nose. I made a decision then, one that would change our family dynamic forever. I cut him off. I told him that until he could act like a part of this family, he wasn't welcome. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was necessary. The rest of us needed to heal, and we couldn't do that with him tearing open old wounds at every turn. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. Just when I thought we could start to move on, my niece's grandfather, the one who had been my brother's nemesis, fell ill. It was serious, and suddenly, my niece was facing the loss of another important figure in her life. She was at the hospital day and night, and in a strange twist, my brother showed up. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was a moment of clarity. but he sat with her in silence, just being there. It was awkward, uncomfortable, but it was a start. I watched from a distance, not ready to forgive, but seeing that maybe there was a sliver of hope for my brother. Maybe he could change. Maybe we could one day be a family again. But for now, I kept my distance, focused on supporting my niece and my mom. It's been very eventful, and I'm not sure where we go from here. But I do know that I won't let my brother's chaos rule our lives anymore. We've been through too much, lost too much. It's time to find some peace, whatever that looks like. Thanks for reading through this. My boyfriend cheats with my sister for nearly a month, and they paint me as the crazy one. So I expose their lies and watch as she packs her bags and he begs for forgiveness. I, 24-year-old female, just discovered my boyfriend, 25-year-old female, has been cheating on me with my sister, 21-year-old female, for almost a month now. We've been dating for almost a year, and this is honestly devastating. I saw him as the man I'd end up with. I had a feeling in the beginning she would be too friendly with him and always try to grab his attention. It always gave me a bad feeling in my stomach, and I'd try to make my annoyance clear. But she always would roll her eyes at me and call me paranoid. A couple of days ago, I managed to get a hold of my boyfriend's phone and saw many messages exchanged between the two, which basically proved they were having a secret relationship. I did the stupid thing of confronting my boyfriend. He snatched his phone back, called me crazy, and left my apartment. We haven't moved in together yet, but we're planning to in the future. I guess he told my sister, and they both deleted any traces of the affair. They also managed to get to my parents before me. My sister still lives at home with my parents, because when I went over to their house to complain, they told me they wanted proof. Now my sister and boyfriend have twisted the narrative, making it seem like I'm crazy and made this whole thing up in my head. I got angry and told my parents if I truly did have a mental illness, why did it only show itself now? And why haven't I acted this way before? My mom agreed that this seems out of character for me, but at the same time, felt it was wrong to accuse my sister of doing something so extreme without proof. I really am at a loss here. How can I convince my parents without any proof? And it seems unlikely I will ever get any proof after this. My parents have promised me they'll kick my sister out and disown her if this is true. How do I even try to convince them I'm not lying? Update. Hello, OP's sister here. I can't say much, but everything that OP posted isn't real, or at least she thinks it is, but it isn't. I don't know what is going on with her. We are in the process of getting her the proper help she needs. The reason my parents had trouble believing her is because her story was very inconsistent. First, she saw flirtatious messages between me and her boyfriend. Then she said she saw nudes, and finally, that we'd be going behind her back for the past month. Today she showed my mother this post, and she found some of the private messages concerning. For now, they've convinced her that they believe her, and I'm in the process of moving into a relative's home for the time being. All my mother asks is to please have respect for our privacy, and someday when OP is better, she might post an update herself. We've talked to a few professionals and booked a couple of different appointments for her. She has currently been advised to stay off social media. One last thing OP forgot to mention is I have a girlfriend, and while I'm technically bisexual, my preference has always been women. Also, I've exchanged 3 texts with her boyfriend their entire relationship. Anyways, her boyfriend isn't that great of a guy that I'd risk every relationship I have for him. OP has been showing some concerning behavior for the past few weeks, and he didn't think to mention anything to her family, and hasn't even asked about her once since their apparent fight the other day. The only reply he's given us is that OP has gone mental, and that's it. That's all I'm able to say. My parents are both with me, and for the past 2 hours, we've been debating on whether to write something here or keep silent, and what to write. We are still very shaken, so we might not be making any sense either, but hopefully OP will get better soon and answer all these questions herself. My mother believes in the power of prayer and asks everyone to pray for her. This account will be logged off until OP wishes to open it again. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Because when I went over to their house to complain, they told me they wanted proof. You're a 25-year-old adult. You don't need to provide your parents with proof of your sister's affair with your boyfriend. Simply break up with your boyfriend. My parents have promised me they'll kick sister out and disown her if this is true. How do I even try to convince them I'm not lying? I'm sorry, but your parents sound extremely toxic. Grow up and handle your own relationships. No one needs to be punished or dragged through the mud over this. Break up with your cheating boyfriend and find someone more suitable. This has nothing to do with your parents. Comment 2. I don't think it's worth even trying to prove anything to anyone when you saw the messages with your own eyes. I would just cut them out of your life. You can't trust your sister to not sleep with any of your other significant others, and can't trust your ex-boyfriend to not sleep with others. Not worth keeping them in your life if all they will do is destroy your happiness. Also, when your ex and sis, get together after you break up with him, you can always point that out to your parents, how quickly she was to get with him. Don't expect them to side with you, though. They may just end up with more excuses so they don't have to get involved. Now, for the update, thank you for reading. So, it's been a month since I found out about my boyfriend and my sister. Things have only gotten worse. I tried to gather evidence, but they were always one step ahead. I even tried to talk to some of our mutual friends, but it seems like my sister had already reached out to them. They all think I'm just jealous or losing it. I was desperate, so I did something I'm not proud of. I went through my sister's room while she was out. I found nothing. No messages, no secret gifts, nothing. It was like they knew I would look and cleaned everything up. I felt ashamed sneaking around like that, but I had to know the truth. Then, one day, I got a call from my best friend. She said she saw my boyfriend and my sister together at a cafe, looking way too close. I rushed over there, and sure enough, there they were, laughing and touching each other's hands. I confronted them right there in public. It was a scene. People were staring, and my boyfriend just told me to calm down and that I was making a fool of myself. My sister didn't even look guilty. She just looked at me with pity. I left there feeling humiliated. I couldn't believe I had made such a scene. But the worst part was, when I got home, I found out that my parents had heard about it. They were furious. They said I was out of control and needed help. They didn't even want to hear my side of the story anymore. I felt so alone. My own family didn't believe me. My friends were distant, and the two people I thought I could trust the most had betrayed me. I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was going crazy. Maybe it was all in my head. But then, something happened that changed everything. My boyfriend's friend, who I barely knew, reached out to me. He said he had something to show me. We met in secret, and he showed me messages from my boyfriend bragging about how he was playing both me and my sister. It was all there in black and white. I felt sick to my stomach. I had the proof I needed, but it was a double-edged sword. If I showed my parents, they would have to disown my sister. I didn't want to be the reason my sister lost her family, even after everything she did. But I also couldn't let them get away with it. In the end, I made the hard choice. I showed my parents the messages. They were heartbroken. They couldn't believe my sister would do something like this. They kept their word and told her she had to leave. She was furious, blaming me for everything. She said I had ruined her life. My boyfriend didn't even try to deny it when confronted. He just shrugged and said it was all just a bit of fun. He left without another word, not even an apology. Now, my sister is gone. My relationship is over, and my family is in pieces. I thought finding out the truth would make things better, but it only made them worse. I'm left with the guilt of tearing my family apart and the pain of betrayal. I'm trying to move on, but it's hard. I feel like I can't trust anyone anymore. I'm just taking it one day at a time, trying to rebuild my life and my relationships with my family. Thank you for reading. My boyfriend hit me and showed no remorse. So I collected evidence and watched him get cuffed by the police. Me and my boyfriend have been dating for 3.5 years. We were out of town for his fraternity formal this weekend. We were both drinking, and at the end of the night, both of our phones ended up dying. We had no way to call an Uber, and we were in a city we were very unfamiliar with. We decided the only way back to the hotel was to walk. Obviously, this was a very stressful situation for both of us, and we were both pretty tipsy at this point. He was getting agitated with me and began to grab me because I was walking too slowly. I didn't like how he was treating me, so I stopped on the sidewalk and refused to walk any further with him. Obviously, he wasn't going to leave me in the city all alone at 2 in the morning, so he stayed with me and began yelling and cursing at me to follow him. After a few minutes of him asking me to walk with him, he hits me straight in the eye. It knocked me to the ground, and I just laid there curled up in a ball for a while. I couldn't see. That's how hard he hit me. After I could stand up, I realized I just needed to do what he said, so he wouldn't do that again. The rest of the walk was filled with him yelling and cursing at me and grabbing me very hard. I cried the whole way back to the hotel, and 30 minutes after the hit, my eye began to swell. He had no remorse and blamed me for us having to walk. Fast forward to the next morning, I wake up with a huge black eye and bruises all down my right arm from him grabbing me so hard. I was expecting that when he woke up, he would feel so bad and beg for my forgiveness. But he didn't. He just told me that he knew I would use it as ammunition in our arguments for a while. That was his biggest concern, not the fact that he had hit me. It took him until the afternoon to sincerely apologize. He says it's because he was hungover and didn't know. Now it is Monday, and I still have a black eye. I have pictures of everything. I'm not sure what to do. It's been 3.5 years, and he's never laid a hand on me until now. It could just be a slip-up, and it may never happen again. I love him so much, and this is the guy I planned on marrying and having kids with. I just don't know how to approach this situation, as I've never prepared for something like this to happen to me. Any advice? Is it even worth considering filing a police report? I don't want anything bad to happen to him, and I told him it could stay between us, but now I'm not too sure if that's a good idea. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Oh, honey. A significant other being hurtful, even if it's for the first time, is always bad news. It doesn't matter the circumstances. Please file a police report, get a no-contact order, and cut off all contact with this person, and get some counseling. I have a feeling the full force of this horrific event hasn't dawned on you yet. Good luck. Comment 2. He is hurtful, and if you don't think it's a big deal, then consider that he might end up ending the life of someone in the future if it isn't addressed. Forget his future. This is why other women get beaten or ended the life of, because some woman in his history didn't want to hold him accountable for his actions. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So, after that horrible night, things just spiraled, and I thought it couldn't get worse, but oh, it did. I went to work on Monday, still with a black eye, and everyone was asking questions. I lied, said I slipped in the bathroom, but they looked at me like they knew I was full of it. And then, out of nowhere, my ex-best friend, who I hadn't spoken to in years, showed up at my job. She had heard through the grapevine about the incident and wanted to check on me. But I knew better. She was always one to stir the pot. She started bringing up the past, how my boyfriend had a history of getting too heated, even before we dated. I never knew about any of this. She told me about a girl he dated in high school, how he'd pushed her during a fight. I felt sick to my stomach. Here I was, thinking this was a one-time thing, but it wasn't. It was a pattern. I confronted him that night, and he blew up, said my ex-friend was lying, that she was just jealous. But when I pushed for the truth, he finally cracked. He admitted it, said it was a long time ago and he was different now. But was he? I didn't know what to believe anymore. The next day, I found out he'd been messaging my ex-friend, threatening her to keep quiet. She showed me the texts, and I was floored. He was trying to control the narrative, keep his secrets buried. I felt trapped in this web of lies and manipulation. I decided I had enough. I took all the evidence, the texts, the photos of my bruises, and went to the police. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I did it. They took my statement, and I could see the wheels turning in their heads. They'd seen this before, too many times. He was arrested the next day. His fraternity brothers couldn't believe it, said it was out of character, but I knew better now. I saw him for who he really was. The court date was set, and I was ready to face him, with all the evidence stacked against him. But then, his mother called me. crying, begging me to drop the charges. She said he was a good boy, that this would ruin his life. And for a moment, I felt guilty, like I was the one doing something wrong. But I shook it off. This wasn't about her or even him. It was about me, my safety, my future. The day of the court hearing came, and it was like a scene from a movie. He was there, looking all remorseful, but I could see right through it. His lawyer tried to discredit me, but the judge wasn't having any of it. The texts, the photos, my testimony. It was overwhelming. He was found guilty. The judge gave him a sentence that made my heart race. It was real. It was happening. He was going to pay for what he did to me. And as he was led away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was free from his grip, finally. After the trial, life slowly started to get back to normal. I got a promotion at work, and my coworkers, they looked at me with respect now. I wasn't the girl with the black eye anymore. I was the girl who stood up for herself. And as for my ex-friend, we started talking again. Turns out, she wasn't trying to cause drama. She was trying to save me from it. We're not best friends like before, but there's a new understanding between us. It's been pretty tough, but I'm coming out of this stronger. I learned the hard way that the past can come back to haunt you, but it doesn't have to define your future. I'm moving on one step at a time. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.